welcome back to the channel. Today with college football season coming up, I wanted to take a look at Power 5 matchups that have never happened. And because I'm doing this by conference, I'm going to do one for each team in the conference. So when you see weird matchups like South Carolina versus Indiana or whatever, don't be surprised. That's just the way I'm doing this. So I'm going to start with the Southeastern Conference. I'm going to try and knock the 14-team conferences out first because they're going to take longer, obviously. And I'll give a breakdown and then what games I'd like to see. So starting with Alabama. Alabama hasn't played 13 of the 64 Power 5 schools. The ACC being Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, and Virginia. The Big 12 being both the Kansas schools. The Big 10 being Iowa, Northwestern, Purdue, and Indiana. And the Pac-12 being both Oregon's and both Arizona schools. That's minimal for this video because they're definitely not the lowest number of not played. Or has played. I guess I should put it that way. Arkansas. The one game I would like to see Alabama play would be Alabama versus Oregon. I think that's a game that would be really interesting in today's age. Arkansas hasn't played 23 out of the 64, still yet not the highest. They have on their list Virginia, NC State, Wake Forest, Pitt, Florida State, Boston College, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, and Louisville. Big 12, West Virginia. Big 10, Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, Penn State, Illinois, and Indiana. Pac-12, both Oregons, Arizona, Utah, both Washington, and Colorado. So, out of the 64 Power 5 schools in college football, Arkansas has not played 23, I believe. Let me count to make sure. Just to make sure I'm right here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, 22, not 23. And the game I'd most like to see for Arkansas would be Arkansas versus West Virginia. Mostly just so we can have a battle of who has the biggest rednecks. Sorry, SEC fans. You guys lost. Moving on to Auburn, they haven't played 10 of them. Again, Pittsburgh, their third appearance in this list. Oklahoma State, Iowa, Illinois, Arizona State, Cal, Stanford, UCLA, and Utah. So, as we get further down this, we're seeing less of each conference. Obviously, my biggest surprise going into this is what I expected was a lot of Pac-12 and SEC schools not to play because of the travel difference. We're seeing a lot of ACC schools, which is surprising. The game I'd most like to see for Auburn would be Auburn versus Iowa. Moving on to Florida, they have not played 13 of the 64. And starting with the Big 12, they've played all the ACC. They are one of the schools to play all of a conference. Have not played Texas Tech, Kansas, TCU, and Iowa State. Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin for the Big 10. And in the Pac-12, you got Washington State, Stanford, Oregon State, both Arizona schools, and Colorado. My game for Florida, obviously, Florida versus Wisconsin. Moving on to Georgia, they have played all the ACC as well, but they have not played either Kansas school, Iowa State, or Rutgers, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, and Northwestern, neither Washington school or Utah. They have not played 12 of the 64. Now my game for Georgia would be Georgia versus Nebraska. Two very overhyped programs that always seem to fail. Would be fun to watch. Moving on to Kentucky, they have not played 18 of the 64 schools. Starting with Wake Forest, another common inclusion in this list. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, or Iowa State. Nebraska, Minnesota, or Iowa. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Kentucky's only played one Pac-12 school. They have not played any of the California schools, either Arizona or Washington school, or Utah, or Colorado, or Oregon. They've played Oregon State, and that's it. Now, the game I'd most like to see for them, Kentucky versus Wake Forest. I don't know why. I kind of just think I just picked that one because I needed a throwaway there. Moving on to LSU, they have not played 11 of the 64. Starting with Pittsburgh, North Carolina State. Another not so common inclusion. Virginia, common. Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Northwestern, and Purdue. Yes, I said Michigan. That's obviously my LSU game. UCLA, Washington State, or Cal. Again, I already said I'd love to see LSU versus Michigan. Moving on to Mississippi State. They have not played 23 of the 64. Neither Virginia School, Pitt, Boston College, or Duke, Iowa State, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, Penn State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And like Kentucky, they've played a very minimal amount of Pac-12 schools. The only Pac-12 schools they've played are Washington and Oregon. So my Mississippi State game to play is Oklahoma. I don't think it'd be a close game in today's age, but, Moving on to the Mizzou Fighting Tigers, Missouri. They haven't played 7 of the 64. They're the highest inclusion in this conference. They have not played North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Wake, or Boston College, or Rutgers, or Washington. My game for them would be Missouri versus Florida State. 2 programs on the rebuild right now. Moving on to our highest number of non-played, Ole Miss, 28 of really 50, because obviously they've all played the SEC. Virginia, Duke, North Carolina State, Louisville, Syracuse, Kansas State, Iowa State, OSU, Michigan State, Illinois, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Penn State, and Iowa. And like Kentucky, they have not played many Pac-12 schools. They've played all the California. They have not played any of the California schools besides Cal, They've played neither Washington school, neither Oregon school, neither Arizona school, Utah, or Colorado. The only Pac-12 team they've ever played was Cal. Moving on to South Carolina, they have not played 23 teams. They have played Boston College, Syracuse, Louisville, Texas Tech, TCU, Kansas, Oklahoma, Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State, Rutgers, Minnesota. Neither Arizona school, neither Oregon school, neither Washington school, none of the 4 California schools. They've played 1 California school, USC. USC versus USC. Funny, right? Utah or Colorado. They've only played 1 Pac-12 school. Moving on to Tennessee, which, again, lowest inclusion in this list, next to Mizzou. Actually lower than Missouri, because they've only not played 6 of them. The South Carolina game I would like to see would be Texas Tech and Ole Miss versus Louisville. I forgot that one. Tennessee has not played 6. Illinois, Michigan State, both Arizona's, Washington, Stanford. I'd like to see Tennessee versus Michigan State. Moving on to Texas A&M, they have not played 8. Syracuse, Virginia, Minnesota, Rutgers, Indiana, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Oregon State. I'd like to see Texas A&M versus Virginia. 14, Vandy. Haven't played 19 of them. Pitt, Florida State, Oklahoma State, Nebraska, Michigan State, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and again, have played 1 Pac-12 school. Neither Washington's, neither Oregon's, neither Arizona's. 3 California. The only Pac-12 school they have played is UCLA. And I'd like to see them versus Illinois. So for the ACC, the least played number of teams is Arkansas. They've only played 5, while Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee have played all. Unsurprisingly, in the Big 12, most played is going to be Missouri and A&M because they were in the Big 12, but also Tennessee. Least played Florida and South Carolina have only played 4. Big 10, least played Ole Miss with 6. Most played Missouri with 13. They've only played 1. There's only 1 Big 10 school they have to play, and it's Rutgers. And I'm sure that seems like a game that's going to happen at some point. I feel like 2 terrible teams. Pac-12, least played 11. Ole Miss, Vandy, South Carolina, Kentucky. Most played Missouri. Missouri shows up in pretty much every spot on this list besides the ACC. And least played totals, Ole Miss with 36, and most played totals, Tennessee with 58. So that's going to wrap up today's video. I'm going to do one of these on the Pac-12 and the ACC and I was suggesting the SEC. but the Big 12, Big 10, etc. And then I might do a group of 5 one if this gets enough traction and people like it. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good day.